In this video, we're going to look at the amount of evidence that was available to police when the case of Lucy Letby and events at the Council of Chester were referred to them in May 2017. This is particularly important because three of the ex-bosses, as described here, managers or executives at the Council of Chester Hospital, were recently arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter, obviously a very serious charge. In relation to this, you can see from an article of the Time that the three executives were not named, and they were arrested as part of a broader investigation into the actions of leaders at the Council of Chester Hospital. This is obviously being conducted by Cheshire Police, who previously arrested and charged Lucy Letby. Detective Superintendent Paul Hughes of the Cheshire Constabulary, one of our favourite individuals in this investigation, commented that in October 2023, following the lengthy trial and subsequent conviction of Lucy Letby, Cheshire Constabulary launched an investigation into corporate manslaughter at the Council of Chester Hospital. This focuses on senior leadership and their decision making to determine whether any criminality has taken place concerning the response to the increased levels of fatalities. In March 2025, the scope of this investigation widened to also include gross negligence manslaughter. This is a separate offence to corporate manslaughter and focuses on the grossly negligent action or inaction of individuals. It is important to note that this does not impact on the convictions of Lucy Letby for multiple offences of murder and attempted murder. Now that makes the reason for these arrests, or the supposed motivation for these arrests, very clear. They are suggesting that executives at the hospital did not act quickly enough and should have essentially shopped Lucy Letby more quickly. This narrative was very much reflected at the time of Lucy's conviction and also in the Thirlwell inquiry. So we see Dr. Stephen Brearey in the first image there commenting on the fact that consultants from the hospital were continually essentially pestering executives to refer this to the police, and then Alison Kelly here is giving evidence to the Thirlwell inquiry and denies that the hospital were too slow to act over concerns. So essentially in this video we're going to assess whether it would have been reasonable for the executives to refer this case more quickly, or whether in fact there is no basis for this assertion. Firstly, the Countess of Chester Hospital was downgraded following the suspicious collapses and deaths over the summer of 2016, resulting in higher dependency babies no longer being treated at the hospital. This has been very well established, and as I've shown in previous videos, a legal representative who was affiliated with the hospital called Corrine Slingo actually warned the hospital that precisely this would happen. It is stated here in this Wikipedia article that restrictions were partly lifted in March 2025. I assume that this is true as no one has removed this from the Council of Chester Wikipedia page, but my investigation into the hospital indicates that I can't see any evidence that this is actually true. If you go onto the page related to hospitals in Cheshire and locate the Council of Chester Hospital, you see that it's a local neonatal unit accepting babies at 32 weeks and above. So it has not been restored to the level that it was at previously when Lucy Letby was working at the hospital and the allegations related to her were made. They are not accepting complex cases, so I cannot see any evidence that this hospital has been upgraded in any meaningful way. Now, one of the interesting things I learned from looking up the Council of Chester and its current status is that you can actually take a tour of the neonatal unit. Here you can see the Council of Chester neonatal unit. So let's see if we can go inside. Here we are inside the Council Chester neonatal unit. There's the sinks. So we won't exit, we'll go through this door here. And here we are. So for example, there's room 1. That's presumably nursery 1. We'll go a little bit further in, so I want to show you something within the hub area. Now here we are within the hub of the neonatal unit at the Council Chester. Now, I hope this isn't too upsetting for people considering the issue in hand, but I just want to demonstrate a couple of things. So here you see typically there's a room 5 there that's a nursery. So we could go further into the building. Maybe we should do that for a second. It just takes us along the corridor. So let's keep going along the corridor. So there's a family area, there's a milk room, Dinky Diva's den there. So let's go back out and go back to where we were before. There is a reason I'm doing this. That's room 1. There's the hub area. We'll go back into the hub area. So here, it's quite clear that this is a kind of typical communal area. This looks very much, I'm sure virtually everyone watching this video has been in a hospital. You know how busy they are. So I want you to know how close room 5 is to the corridor. So it's just a corridor right here. There's people coming in and out of these rooms all the time. There's other nurses on the unit. There are registrars on the unit. There are consultants that can come in and out. There are parents that can come in and out. There are other hospital personnel that can come in and out. It's going to be extremely difficult for anyone to engage in any malicious acts without being detected. It would be something extraordinary to engage in this number. There's supposed to have been dozens of attacks on infants that have been conducted in this space. You know, Lucy's going to have her back to the corridor. She doesn't know who's coming. Anyone could come in at any moment. And I want to emphasise as well that in one of the cases, it's child E, she's supposed to have just hung around for an hour doing nothing. Unbelievably unlikely. Look, and you can see from this tour, look how close she always would be to a communal area. The accusation is literally she's coming in and out of these corridors, telling the parents, oh, everything's fine. I'll just go into the nursery. There could be a nurse coming in, there could be a doctor coming in, there could be a registrar coming in, there could be a consultant coming in, but I'll engage in these arcane acts that have never been seen before. I'll get away with it every single time, then I'll just come back out of the corridor. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. So another aspect of this that I want to mention briefly is that there were non-indictment babies, infants not included in the court case, that were born at 39 and 40 weeks, as you can see here. There's a third infant as well. So infants can pass away that are ostensibly healthy, that are not in the most vulnerable cohort. That's not unheard of for a neonatal unit, far from it. There were deaths in previous years at this hospital. There are deaths across the NHS system in multiple neonatal units. And as I mentioned previously, 20 other hospitals were referred for poor performance in the same year as the Council Chester. It's just that the Council Chester was the only hospital that came to the conclusion that a nurse was trying to inject air into the infants. So with regard to evidence being passed to the police, I'm going to take you through a little timeline of this that is available from the Thirlwell Inquiry. So the first document we're going to look at is INQ 0003226, page 1 of document produced by Stephen Cross titled Rationale, dated the 3rd of April 2017. Stephen Cross was the Director of Legal Services and Head of Corporate Affairs at the hospital. In this document, Stephen Cross states quite plainly that in our view, there is no evidence to justify a criminal investigation. So to be clear, this is just 1 month before this case was passed to the police. Next, we're going to look at INQ 0003236, and this is the minutes of an extraordinary board meeting that was held on the 13th of April 2017. This involves Simon Medland, who's a lawyer, and various other members of the executive phalanx at the Council Chester. And it is noted during this meeting that neither the Royal College Review or Dr. Horden, spelled incorrectly, Dr. Horden's review identified any criminal issues. Dr. Horden said that a forensic review should take place. The consultants take the view that they are not militant or agitating for the matter to go to police, but they cannot see anyone else who could investigate it. So, firstly, it's noted here that there's no evidence for this case to go to the police, but the consultants are very insistent. So I want you to remember the expression here: the consultants take the view that they are not militant or agitating for the matter to go to the police. Keep that in mind as we continue through these documents. Next, we're going to look at INQ 0005857. This again involves Simon Medland QC on the 12th of April 2017. In this meeting, he expresses the view that the police, being strapped for resources and in any event, can only sensibly investigate cases where there is, at the very least, reasonable grounds for suspecting that a criminal offence has been committed. He emphasised this was very different from there being mere suspicion. So this is another emphasis, just weeks now before the case is referred to the police, that there is no basis, no evidence for this to occur, essentially. So we're just going to rewind now to July 2016 and INQ 0101942, which involves email correspondence between Corrine Slingo and Sue Hodkinson, Deborah Cleverly and Ian Pace. These are all executives at the hospital, apart from Corrine Slingo, who was a legal representative that was working closely with the Countess of Chester. In this document, Corrine Slingo states that there does not currently appear to be any reason to formally alert the police to these issues, as there is nothing upon which one might reasonably base a suspicion of a criminal offence having been committed. Now, this is the point when Lucy is removed from the neonatal unit, and it's important to note that several procedures took place after this. There was a grievance procedure, there were various investigations. These went on for months and months and months. And as we're seeing in April 2017, at the culmination of those events, so the consultants have had the opportunity to be interviewed. They've been part of the grievance procedure. They have raised nothing that the executives have been able to cite that would constitute meaningful evidence. Then on the 2nd of May 2017, we see this letter sent to Cheshire Police to, Chief Constable Simon Byrne, which is essentially referring the case to Cheshire Police for them to investigate. Just 3 days after this, in INQ 0102298, we see a meeting at the Cheshire Constabulary between Tony Chambers, Stephen Cross and Ian Harvey. During this meeting, it is noted that there is no evidence other than coincidence, and that the coincidence theory has been used to finger Lucy Letby. Then in another meeting on the 12th of May 2017, unfortunately I can't show you a title page for this particular document as Thirlwall hasn't produced one, we see several members of the Cheshire Constabulary meeting with Tony Chambers, Stephen Cross and Ian Harvey of the Countess of Chester Hospital. This is on the 12th of May 2017, 7 days after the police have said, we have no evidence, there is no evidence other than coincidence. Now, I don't wish to make any assertions regarding this meeting. I will simply ask people to reflect on the fact that 3 executives were arrested by Cheshire Police, and you can note the number of executives that are in attendance at this meeting. During this meeting, it is stated that at this stage, the Countess of Chester have exhausted all lines possible, and there is nothing that could potentially be evidence of a criminal investigation. The concerns raised by the consultants have been raised previously, and there is nothing they are aware of that would consider or believe that potential criminal offences may have been committed. And then Darren Martland, who's a police officer, replied that if the Countess of Chester's position is that they are satisfied where they are, and there is nothing of anything that would cause to believe potentially criminal offences have been committed, which may warrant a police investigation, then this needs to be placed in writing to Darren Martland. He will respond that based on meetings and discussions at this stage, the police position could be summarised that police investigation will not be led due to these reasons listed. So we're now going to move on to an article published in Unherd, Hidden Email Cast Doubt on Lucy Letby Verdict, authored by David Rose and Cleo C. de Oliveira. This involves quotations and actions of Dr. Ravi Jayaram, one of the consultants at the Countess of Chester, and an email that was sent on the 4th of May 2015 after the case was referred to the police. As described here, Dr. Jayaram was blunt about the purpose of this, of not only the email that's been sent, but actions that the consultants were engaging in at this point in time. It was so the police could have their interest piqued. To do this, he suggested the doctor should highlight explicitly for these cases that Lucy Letby was in attendance and in close proximity to the incubators. In those situations, we know for a fact she was. I'll now move on to a meeting that took place on the 15th of May 2017. This is document INQ 0102309, notes of a meeting between Nigel Wenham and senior clinicians. Now, you don't exactly need to have extrasensory perception to guess which clinicians were in attendance at this meeting. Dr. Stephen Brearey and Dr. Ravi Jayaram. And then during this meeting, they seed Cheshire Constabulary with information of varying degrees of accuracy, some of it completely inaccurate, much of it tenuous, so that presumably they can pique the interest of the police. Now, there's three things that I'd like to say in conclusion to this video. The first one is that we can be critical of the police and we can be critical of the consultants. However, without evidence, this case would not have proceeded. The only reason this case proceeded is because Dr. Evans walked in there and did what we by now know that he did. If it had been basically any other medic in the country, this case would never have gone to court. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing that I would like to say is that I don't wish to make any further comment about the content of this video other than this case stinks. It absolutely reeks. It is putrid. And then the third thing that I would like to say is it's not surprising to me that Cheshire Police had a perfectly functional Twitter account on which they posted every day, and then on the 8th of December 2024 they suddenly stopped posting and have never started again. That is because at this point they would be absolutely inundated with criticism and they can't control the comments on their Twitter account. Finally, if you've enjoyed this video, if you could leave a like, then it would be very much appreciated. This helps make the videos and the channel more visible on YouTube. If you're not subscribed already and you've enjoyed the video and would like to see more content, please do subscribe. Again, this helps the visibility of the channel and makes content more readily available to you. And finally, if you'd like to leave a comment, then I do read all comments. I try to respond to as many as I possibly can, and I enjoy that process very much, so that again would be very much appreciated.